Welcome, everyone, to the podcast. Wow, the switch has been flipped. Right before school started this week, the temperatures dropped from the 90s, sweltering hot, to the 50s and 60s. It was literally overnight. I can't believe it. It's been dropping down into the 40s at night. And of course, we're having a little bit more color show on the leaves. They're getting a little bit of the red and gold. Few yellows are starting, and my garden has hit the end of the season flowers. My autumn joy sedum is getting ready to be in full bloom. I've pretty much let my garden sit since the end of July when the heat and the air quality was so bad. And I decided today with the 50-degree temperatures this morning, and then I was able to be out in the coolness of the day, and I realized ragweed had taken over so much of the garden, so much of the empty spaces in my lawn. And yeah, so I did probably 15, 20 minutes worth of weeding, and I'll do that over the next few days, couple weeks, and then hopefully it'll be in better shape for next spring. I know the fall is where a lot of people start doing a second garden in warmer climates, but for us, it is getting to the end of the growing season. Before the frosts really dig in, we are hoping to plant the clover seeds. They came in the mail, and we have an old patio that we're lifting, and it got broken up. The limes, they're flagstones and made out of limestone, and they're heaved. And my husband's been working on that for several weeks. And hopefully, we'll be able to get the soil brought in and then plant those seeds so that we can start really getting more clover in our yard instead of ragweed. I really, really am looking forward to having so much more clover and less grass in our yard. The weather, though, has got me thinking back to school means new year. Where do I want to go with this podcast? And I decided I wanted to get back to the roots. I'm trying a new setup where I'm podcasting on my phone directly into Podbean. And I'm excited because it becomes a pain to set up and be in a different place. Let's see how sound quality is, how the volume is. And it feels great. It feels stripped down and really getting back to simplicity in my life. So, why did I even start this podcast 9 years ago? My podcast anniversary is coming up. Yes, 9 years. Thank you to those who have been here since the beginning. And I just want to say that I wanted to just keep talking about the excitement of making things. And quilting is one of the arts and crafts that I really enjoy doing the most. But in order to stay inspired and to get better, I also pick up a few other types of crafts along the way. So this week I wanted to bring up that I've been working on the Family Favorites Quilt-along. It was hosted by Fat Quarter Shop using the Family Favorites book by Sherry and Chelsea. You'll know Sherry from A Quilting Life, and she has a podcast and YouTube channel. This is an absolutely gorgeous book, a lovely pattern, and Brightly is one of many quilts and little mini pincushions in this book. I got my top done, and I had the worst time photographing the entire quilt top. It's hard. It is hard to photograph quilts. So blocks are easier because they're small, but this quilt has a lot of white in the background, and I used a gorgeous fabric collection, and it's called Feed My Soul by Sandy Gervais. And I took it outside on one day that was sunny because we've had a lot of rainy days. And the wind blew, and I have quilt feet, your feet hanging out the bottom of the quilt. And I got all kinds of really not great shots, but I included those as well as the full quilt shot laid out flat and the quilt in a lawn chair and in a chair in my dining room. I just want to say, when you look at people's professionally done photos or people who may be very good photographers, kudos to you because getting a picture of a quilt, a whole quilt, is incredibly difficult. And the lighting, the trying to get no shadows and get the right angle, it's all very difficult. So I did my best to Sherry and Chelsea when I posted my completed quilt top, and I cannot wait to get that quilt on the frame. But first, I loaded my Lori Holt apple quilt. Yeah, do you remember last year I sewed out of her latest book, Scrappiness is Happiness, and it had a book with apples in it. And I made it about 48 by 55. And I loaded it on the frame, and lo and behold, I don't have a batting that size. I don't want to waste the twin size batting that I have. So I'm going to run to the quilt shop before they close this afternoon and look for a batting because I don't keep a lot of batting in the house and I have a lot of scraps and nothing that will work. So that is the quilt on the frame. But I have to have a project and I put the current So Happy Quilt by Lori Holt in timeout. I just need a break from it. I've worked on it since January with help for 7 months at the Lori Holt Club, the quilt shop owner in my neighborhood. She spent time with me every month when we met about how to cut and use a ruler properly and not use your mat to cut all the pieces. Because man, oh man, these have tiny, tiny pieces. And I really like paper piecing so much better than cutting out these tiny pieces. So I put it in time out. But what I did find is that having a caterpillar helped. So I bought a caterpillar. It is a light pad and it kind of looks like an oversized iPad that has a lot of light settings on it. In the self-healing cutting mat on top had lines on it. So I realized that that was getting in my way and distracting me while I was trying to cut using the rulers that I have. So I know they make a clear cutting mat to fit the pad. So I'm putting that in time out for now, the So Happy quilt. And then I found out that Angel at Halo Inspirations is starting a new quilt along. And I was so excited. She made a sawtooth star and framed it. And she's using her scraps of Lori Holt fabric. And she took a survey in her YouTube group and she does weekly lives on both Facebook and YouTube. And everybody thought that would be great. She made it originally as a pillow, but to make it an entire quilt and possibly have the centers change. And she, in fact, kicked off a quilt along with the centers changing. So I reached out to Angel and I said, I would love to quilt along. And I think I'm going to use my It's So Emma foundation paper piecing pad in the center. I'll follow the quilt along with you. And she thought that was a great idea. So she's making two different types of pattern pieces, one for the larger quilt, and the center is 6 inches. And I'm doing the sawtooth star, which will stay the same in every block, and the center will be 4 inches. I love foundation paper piecing smaller blocks, and I'm working on some of these. I will also be doing traditional piece and cutting. And with this particular quilt along, it's free while the quilt along is going along. and then she will take that free pattern down. So you may want to jump on that, because if you are like me and you like stars and you like scrappy sashing, and it's gonna be a challenge for me because the sashing is 3 strips, and then she's doing a 9 patch for cornerstones. Now, I'm still debating on how I want to do my cornerstones, so I'm not making them right now, and I'm making a couple of sets of the triple strips, I call them, sashing, because I don't want to have like fabrics touching each other. It's a scrap quilt. I have a controlled scrappy. I'm taking my Liberty of London, it's not London, it's Liberty Fabrics from Riley Blake. I have leftovers from a layer cake, and I also have strawberry lemonade, a layer cake, as well as a few fat quarters and some other fabrics that I'm throwing in. So it's going to be different from Angels, which is a Lori Holt scrappy quilt. And I'm saving my Lori Holt stash for the So Happy. So I'm very excited because I have the first block done in the center was a 9 patch, and flying geese are da 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 paper piece. Yes, it's the It's So Emma pads, and you can get the flying geese papers in many sizes. So I have the 2 by 4 flying geese. I do not sew flying geese well without paper piecing. The points are never right, and the corners droop and sag. So think that paper piecing just makes my quilts so much better and sharp points, and I like the small block paper piecing. Goes back to my roots. Remember back, if you have been with me for any length of time, I started paper piecing on the Farmer's Wife. Wow, was that a hard quilt to paper piece? Oh, yeah. Was it the Farmer's Wife? No, I lied. It was the Civil War diary quilt. And I chose those 6-inch blocks. Yes, 6-inch blocks. And I chose that because I wanted to work up the skills to do a Dear Jane. Oh, we won't talk about my Dear Jane that is in timeout. Yes, it was the Civil War diary quilt, and then I did the Farmer's Wife. Most all of those are paper pieced, and then I made a couple of different quilts using the Farmer's Wife blocks, and then the Civil War diary quilt, I did set it on point and finished it. It's really a beautiful quilt. In fact, I haven't got it out in a while. I should get it out, dust it off, and put it on my bed. It's really a very pretty quilt. That was the original quilt that I did, that I fell in love with paper piecing and the smaller block. I still haven't mastered the Dear Jane because a lot of that's applique and it is not in my wheelhouse. And I'm hoping there's a couple of blocks in this particular sampler that I'm doing with Angel. Well, not, it's a sampler center, and she has applique, and she is such a good teacher. She has YouTube tutorials for every block, and I'm going to pick up a lot of tips and tricks to figure out why my applique stinks so bad. So I've worked on cutting accurately. I've worked on my 1/4 inch, and I want to work on the applique. So if you're looking for a scrappy star, she's calling it Fantabulous Scrappy Stars. It's a perfect name for a quilt that Angel is making. And they're sawtooth stars with different centers, and scrappy bindings would be great with this, and the scrappy sashings. Bust your stash. It'll be a lovely quilt. And I believe it is 7 or 8 months. I think 8 months, the 9th month assembly. So I'm very, very excited. And that's really about it for the quilting. No, I did one other project. I finished my panel challenge for Quilt Guild. I haven't gone to a meeting in a couple of months due to the heat, due to one was the annual picnic, and I'm going to go in a couple days for our first meeting in September, and I'm going to show these two quilts. And the panel challenge was the All Michigan Shop Hop as a panel, and you're supposed to cut it up and make something with it, anything. So I designed a quilt around a star with cutting the fussy cuts on the panel into the wall hanging. It's not real big because it has to hang at the library for the Quilt Guild's little show that we do in March. And I put a sailboat in the center, which is digitally printed on this panel. And then I cut out the Michigan themes that I really like and the word Michigan. I used different scraps in different areas of the panel that was left over to pull it together. So I'll put a picture of it in the show notes, and it's like a jigsaw puzzle, really, once the star was formed, because around the star, I used the foundation paper for the square in a square. And you can see that On Point has fussy cuts in the center and then some red points for the star shape. I'm really proud of this. I haven't made a designed improvish jigsaw puzzle piece. That's what we'll call this, a jigsaw puzzle quilt in a long time. It was a really good exercise for my brain, and I feel really excited that I did it. And it came together exactly the way I thought it would. And so I feel like I'm making huge strides in recovering from long COVID after 3 years that I'm able to do this. I haven't been able to sew like that or do jigsaw style design as I go because it was just too hard and overwhelming. But this was a lot of fun. So I did finish that quilt top too. And I'm getting the bug to long arm and put bindings on the few quilts that I have because boy, oh boy, we're going to be using our quilts before long because of the cooler temperature. There's always a quilt on my bed, even in the summer. We have one and use it a lot just because it's just not never. It's usually not that difficult, that hot. But we do kick off the quilts in heat of the summer and then in the winter sometimes when the furnace runs a lot because it's super cold. The upstairs can get a little warm. So that is what I have been working on for the quilting. I have not been cross stitching. I've made a couple of more knit blocks for my piece by piece knit block sampler that's going to be pulled together for a blanket. And I have been working on my Bridgerton embroidery. I was given a preview of a book that is themed embroidery for hoops that are Bridgerton themed. And it is a really pretty piece. I thought I had the book right here, but I don't. I'll put the name of the book and the author. It's lovely. I think it's a beautiful book. The photography is great, and the embroidery pieces are really pretty. Now, I used a linen for my first sample to test it out. It's linen from a needle workshop for cross stitch and other embroidery, and I don't like it. I'm going to finish the bouquet of flowers that I picked for the first one. And then the next one, I'm going to use a cotton woven linen look that I use. It's really nice quality. And I cut off some curtains and I've been slowly hanging them up in my house. They're a cream color and it's just a nicer hand. And when you do a satin stitch on it, it doesn't feel like it pokes and leaves as many holes in the fabric is what I'm feeling I'm getting with this particular flower, bouquet of flowers. And it's really a lot of satin stitch with a few French knots. But the book is beautiful and it has a lot of gorgeous things in it. So I would encourage you, if you want to try something Bridgerton themed, and the embroidery is not difficult and they're not too big. Because I'm finding some of these really big projects are just not interested in doing. I need a pick up and put down, something that I can get a few hits of dopamine on, like nearly instant gratification projects. And these embroidery stitches are a little bit more of that. And I'm using up the stash of floss that I have. So just so far, I have some pink and purple flowers, and we will see how it goes. The most exciting thing that I've done recently is a couple weeks ago, I went to the AQS Quilt Week in Grand Rapids. It was a quilt show of about 300 quilts with some special exhibitions. And I loved the show. I've always loved the show. Is my kind of my first love. I got a couple of quilts in the show, probably in about 2013. And it was the year I dropped my son off to college. I got a quilt in the show, and I just couldn't believe it that I actually had a quilt with all of these other quilts. It was such an honor to be there. And I've had two of my quilts there and one quilt that was a Circle of Friends quilt that we made. And I really quilted a custom job on that one that I'm just so proud of. So I went. Now, this year, I was a little bit, not anxious, but had a little bit of concern because I was going alone. My mom had an injury to her back and hip to where she couldn't walk. And my husband said, I'll let you go to the show and you can look and spend time and really enjoy it. I'm going to go find something to do. And it turns out he wasn't feeling that great, but he drove me down there because I don't do so hot driving in the city. And Grand Rapids is easy for me to get turned around. And so that's what we did. I spent 3 hours at the show. I walked over 3,000 steps, and that's a huge, huge achievement for me. I felt good. And I loved the fact that they took note of a few people making comments about, I wish there were more areas to sit and rest, not only out of the show area in the gallery hallway, but in the show. They used to have more places to sit and linger, sit and look at some of the quilts. And they did have that. They had areas to sit and linger and look at the exhibition like an art show. In the Pat and Sue Nichols, I can't remember the names of the ladies. Anyway, they're two sisters, Pat and Sue, and they have been in the quilt industry for a long time. They're both powerhouses, and they have some amazing quilts. And you could sit and look at them like at an art gallery, just to sit and see them from far away as well as close up. And I enjoyed that. And then the Cherry Wood Challenge had chairs like set up that you could just look and really absorb the workmanship and the stories they were telling. Because this year, the Cherry Wood Challenge was poppies. So it was grays and poppy red. So there were a lot of very heartfelt mini quilts. Cherrywood Challenge is always a small mini quilt telling stories of people's grandparents in World War One, Flanders Fields. Then there were some people who took it to the opioid crisis because opium is a derivative from poppies. And so there was a lot of really heartfelt stories as well as some just amazing little quilts that were just florals, Art Nouveau poppies, poppies in the modern sense, and a cat named Poppy. That was They were beautiful as always. And I have to say, I really was surprised how much I enjoyed that exhibit because I thought the theme would be too heavy in 2025, but no, it really was beautiful. And I know they've announced next year's challenge, but I don't remember what it is. So it'll be a surprise. And then they had a lounge area inside that if you had a water bottle in your purse, you could sit down and you could rest. They had round tables set up so you could chat with people you came with in a group or maybe make new friends because I went alone. And certainly as you sit down and rest or you sit and ponder, you meet other quilters. And it was fun because I wasn't feeling alone at all because people would chat with me and I'd be pondering it. How did they make some of these most intricate and amazing quilts? The quilts did not look like they always did. No, in the past, they were hyper blinged, I call it, with lots of rhinestones. Yes, there were some that still had rhinestones on them, especially there was the King Tut sarcophagus that was lots of bling. And there were others that had the mini rhinestones on them. But there were a lot of quilts that were more embroidery and mixed media, and the handwork is coming back. There were some hand quilted quilts, hand embroidered. It was spectacular. I loved one that looked like a little almost like Richard Scarry's Village. Do you remember those Busy Town books? Well, this was like cottagecore with little mushroom houses and the doors opened and you could see little mice inside and each piece was super tiny and embroidered. And it was from a Japanese needleworker and it was just fabulous. Several were computer embroidery, which I don't know how I feel about that, but at the same time, it's quilting. And there was one that was all cut out in the winter circle. It was a cutout quilt. It almost looked like Battenberg lace, extra large. I really enjoyed all of the quilts. The winners did not look like the winners of the past. It was very refreshing. And I know that they have a new director of the quilt shows. And Bonnie Browning retired over this last year. And so the new director is going to do exceptionally well because this show was amazing. I love the new American Quilter magazine because a friend of mine loaned me her copy because the center was about watercolors and how to do watercolors. And this was a art quilter who does both pictures, artists blowing bubbles on paper and things like that. But to help her really come together in making some of her art quilts. So I found that fascinating. The other thing was for the Pat and Sue special exhibit, there were all kinds of QR codes, which I'm going to watch probably in this next week or so when I have a few minutes in downtime to hear their story and little videos of each quilt and its backstory, if you will, because, every quilt does have a story and inspiration. And I'm looking forward to that, especially there's tiny quilts that they did for samples. And then the really big one, it's the Beatles. And it was very inspired quilt. I also noticed that you could do a mini version of that at a AQS seam retreat, and you have to be a member to go to that. And she's teaching a small version of that quilt. Ooh, I would love to do it, but not this year. But I had so much fun. I told my husband I would really like to go to AQS Paducah, kind of ticking off a few things that I would like to do before I retire, which may be in a couple of years while we have a little money. And I was going to really try hard to get to Houston International Quilt Show in October this year. I'm not ready. I can't walk a show with 1,000 quilts because I saw that's what they said they have 1,000 quilts. And I know many people have been to Houston and I want to be able to walk it. So I think I need a little more time to get stronger, but I don't know that I want to travel to that show alone. So maybe we can incorporate a trip where my husband can either navigate the driving through Houston or we can fly there and do a little sightseeing while we're there because there are a few things that I think would be fun. Aerospace and rodeos, I know, are kind of big things in Texas, especially in the Houston area. So that would be a lot of fun. So he went and did some research while I was in the quilt show and said, we could get a room. There's some available 20 miles away from Paducah. I went, are you kidding me? I had entered a raffle to try to win a trip to Paducah, but I did not win. And he said, yeah, and the hotels aren't terrible. And while I was in the show, he had mentioned this town going in. He had done a little bit of research and they said it was a great town to stay in and drive into Paducah. And they said that the Paducah Quilt Show, and if anyone's ever been to Paducah, let me know. They said it's probably at least twice as big as the Grand Rapids show and that I would enjoy going. Of course, they're promoting Paducah. So anyway, if you've been to Paducah or Houston, I would love to have a comment about tips, tricks, and ways to navigate the show. I'm thinking Paducah, I'll need 2 days because it's probably twice as big, and I may need more than that for Houston. And if I take a class, I may need to be there for the entire time at Houston. So I'm excited. I've also been looking at these seam retreats because I want to go to a quilt retreat with an instructor. I decided I didn't want to go to just sit and sew type of retreat like my quilt guild has one for a couple $100, but you have to feed yourself, you have to travel with all your stuff, and then you just sit there for a few days and sew. I don't know a lot of those women well at this point. I've only been a member for a year, but I really want to go to one where there's a teacher and learn and work on a process while there, and then have a little bit of time in the afternoon or evening to do little exploring or resting or getting your own dinner, that kind of a thing. So those are some things that I want to do over the next couple of years. And I think that really has brought me to what I am working on besides quilting and needlework. So I signed up for a art journaling class called Let It Go by Elisa Burke. She has a YouTube channel and I really like her style. It's mixed media of sorts, but she does a lot of doodles and painting and using mixed different types of media with the paints and adding a few embellishments. And her art journal classes they were on sale for this Labor Day weekend, and I got one for $15. I can't believe it. So it's a 30-day class where you start with a little bit of an introduction and then you go through daily prompts with a video. So far the videos are about 10-15 minutes with a different process, and I've completed 2 days so far. The first day was curiosity, and you were to use acrylic paint and a flat surface and pull it across the page. And I did that. And it is curious what happens to the paint and that you have no control over it. And I used acrylic paint. And then when it was done, I embellished it a little bit and added a star. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to use just a couple colors because I think having too many colors is overwhelming. And I have a gold paint, acrylic paint, and a teal paint. I do have more watercolors and a whole little mini palette to pick more colors. But for the acrylics, that's what I'm going to use. And then I have a Sharpie acrylic pen set. Then I also did the next day, which was Wonder, and she wanted to do a wet on wet watercolor, which basically is you drop watercolor on shapes that you have painted in water first. And then that watercolor does its wonder, which is the prompt of just what is going to happen with this watercolor. And she said, we'll use these pages again for a lesson later. So I did a big ring and I put different colors in it. And I tried to stick in with the greens and blues with a little bit of red. And then I did a strip that wound up looking like mountains in the distance in reds and yellows and oranges, kind of like a sunset. So we'll see where it goes. It was wonderful. And I'm excited because this is like my jumping into art journaling a little bit more. And so then for fun, I had a couple of layouts that I've done. It took me several days of just cutting out little mini quilts from the AQS Quilt Show catalog, and then playing with torn papers and painted backgrounds. That one is super fun. And then another one I practiced fussy cutting watercolors that I had put pen on over top and made flowers. So after messing around with the background quite a bit, I made a bouquet of flowers in a vase. So these things help me understand colors using the color wheel, what kind of goes together, what doesn't, contrast, value, all the things that are important when you're making a quilt. And I'm learning from these processes how to be more relaxed about things because quilting, wow, can be all about perfection, can't it? And perfection is not really what I want, but I want things to be done right. So I'm trying to approach my quilting not as perfect and not as good enough, but as more done in a very precise manner. And sometimes if it's not perfect, it's okay. Or if some of the colors are a little muddy in my scrap quilt, it's okay. And long arming, I do free motion, so it's really helped a lot by shapes, doodling pages, and just kind of loosening up and kind of letting your mind wander a little bit as you quilt. So that's the class I'm doing now. And then in September, mid September to October, I'm starting a beginning pottery class. And I'm going to drive to that on Saturdays for a few hours. And then in October, I've paid for a class that is little snippets on making fodder for watercolor, fodder for art journal pages. And so you probably do some watercolors. And so fodder is what these little pieces of paper or shapes or paper dolls that you'll use in your layouts. So it's nice to have options. It's kind of like when you make a scrap quilt with lots of blocks, like the sawtooth star I'm making, where I can work on the centers and I can make a whole bunch of flying geese with different color combinations. Then you have choices of putting them together and making your final decisions. And that's what this is. Fodder is like lots of different choices of these little, maybe fussy cuts or little miniature pieces that you can cut up, cut down, or maybe they're little pen and ink on top of watercolor that you can use for your art page. So, art journal page. So, that is the plan for the fall. And I want to take my out of the house classes before the snow flies. I know I said that four-letter word already, snow, because it's coming. And once the snow flies and I'm not driving very far, My husband's better at driving on it because he's a professional driver, a truck driver, so he drives in it every day, but I am not, a fan driving in the snow. But let's not get too far down the road. So I thought I would end with talking about a few things that have really been coming up in my feeds a lot, and that is convenience. So I watched a video on YouTube, and the lady has adopted a more simple lifestyle, and it was all about having an analog lifestyle as much as possible. And I'm like, I do love my computer, and I do love doing my podcast on my computer. And I love using AI to help me edit my pictures sometimes, as well as writing a few of my social media posts because I get stuck. But there's also this thing about being so convenient that it's gotten, I've noticed, me a little mentally, what's the word I'm looking for? Not lazy, but unmotivated and not creative. And lazy in the fact that I don't have to remember it. Like, I can't remember telephone numbers, but I can tell you the phone number I had all my childhood growing up because you had to memorize it. So, you know, it's just one of those things where convenience has also made us physically not active. I was thinking about that while I was pulling ragweed this morning, that, unless I really am intentional about getting outside and moving or doing my qigong, which is a precursor to tai chi in the morning, or getting on my walking pad and walking, it's just no reason to even leave home. It's no I don't even need to move. And she said it's kind of like the movie Up. Now, I've never watched the movie Up, but it's just one of those gigs where you're like, we don't have to move. They were in hover chairs, if I remember right, in the little snippets that I have seen of it. And the video was from Real Vintage Doll's House. And I thought the YouTube channel, and I thought it was great. It was the internet. Number one, she did another one about the internet hates us, people who are not of the norm. But the one I'm referring to is we don't do anything anymore. Why convenience is killing us? And I went, well, yeah, right back to the whole. When I look back at how hard my grandmothers and great grandmothers, who I knew them, I knew three of my great grandmothers, they worked very hard. They lived simpler lives. Not going to romanticize how hard they worked, but they physically did demanding things up until they couldn't anymore in their senior years. And now I think even in my lifetime, I have a computer. I sit at a computer all day. I could sit at a computer or on my phone, which is a mini computer, all day, all night. I'm recording on my mini computer right now, testing out a new setup and convenience. I don't have to restrain myself with shopping anymore because I'm limited by what I have in town. I can hop on the internet and we have an Amazon warehouse in my little town. It's a small warehouse, but good grief, I can have things here at my door now instead of it taking 5 to 7 to 10 days shipping. Amazon Prime is here within a day or two or three. Wow, there are some things that will be here overnight without extra shipping. Convenient, it's great, except I can also not reel myself in every once in a while. It's easy to pop it in a cart and buy it. One of those things that I did is an impulse buy, which I am loving. In fact, if you'd like this is a truly instant gratification project, is I bought a beadable pen kit. Saw somebody at work get one as a gift and I wanted one. I went on Amazon and I found a beadable pen kit that is everything from the pens, which have a long steel rod sticking out of it. You unscrew the rod and you put on silicone beads, which are lightweight, so you're not having too heavy of a pen, and bling and tassels. And I have butterflies as the focus charm. You can go down a rabbit hole, let me tell you. And I bought this all as a kit to see if I liked it. And I really do. I have 12 pens, and I'm keeping them all because they're me. And you can even buy little beadable pen refills should you need to. It was a very inexpensive craft, I think 20 bucks. I was so excited because if I'm going to buy a pre-made beadable pen from Etsy, or if I was going to buy the beadable pens and all the silicone beads and all of that, I would still have 12 and I would be fumbling around to find things that matched or went together. And I had spent $50 just to have a couple pens when I was sourcing my own beads. So there you go. Amazon got me. I live 4 houses down from a quilt shop, and I can go down there anytime I want. I can walk there if I want to, and I do often. And if she doesn't have it in her shop, then I can go online and pop it in a cart and have it shipped to me. And again, it will be here within a week. One of many shops that have online shopping, including her. She has online shopping too. So convenience is killing us. I've watched several shows on this now. It's popping up in my feed. It's also popping up in my organization channels that I watch from time to time. Now, I'm not a minimalist by any stretch. I'm pretty much a maximalist. But they're saying, I think it was Clutterbug or somebody, they were, or maybe an article about the number of items that we have in our homes currently. So, like in my grandmother's time, which would have been 3 generations ago. But about 3 generations ago, not all that long ago in time, the average person had about 3,000 items in their home, materialistically speaking. Items, things that you had, and that was it. And I was shocked at the number, and I really wish where that article was. I think it was an article on the internet that just came up in my news feeds because I had been watching these shows. Anyway, currently, the average home has 300,000 items in it. Materialism of the sort of we have lots of convenience things. I have more kitchen appliances now than I ever had. My grandma had pots and pans and a stove. That's it. And a coffee pot. They did buy a coffee pot at one point. But I have everything. I have a stove, a microwave, a toaster oven, not toaster oven, a air fryer, and I have a dishwasher, and I have an immersion blender now because I needed one. No, I didn't. I wanted one. I have a regular blender. So my kitchen has probably triple the amount of items in it, and I don't even like cooking. Let's not talk about my craft stash, which I'm really glad I have. But not only is it convenient, it's also privilege. So I was very careful when I went to the quilt show not to buy things I didn't need, and I did not. I got a few goodies for joining the AQS, but what did I buy? I bought the clear Caterpillar mat that I was looking for, and I bought one impulsive buy, which is a reverse applique using felt and cotton and embroidery. I'll have to buy some pearl cotton for that. It's very pretty, and I can make a pillow, or she said I could applique it on the back of my jean jacket, which I thought was a brilliant idea. Why did I buy it? Because I loved the lady who made the designs. I'll have to find that and put it in the show notes too. So, convenience. Yeah, it got me in my health well before I got long COVID, sitting at a desk all day. I went from a nursing job where for the first 8, 9 years of my nursing career, I worked in a hospital and I walked all day. And we didn't have pedometers on our belts, and I didn't have a smartwatch back then. But I walked a lot. We didn't have computers yet when I started nursing that we did our notes on. We hand wrote all of our notes. We had all kinds of things that were coming, though. We did get a computer that dispensed controlled substances when I was a nurse on that unit. And that was the beginning of the explosion of technology. Now I work in an office where I sit. I sit all day and I have to make it a point to get up every hour, or when we're seeing clients, every half hour or so, I will be getting up and getting clients and getting them ready for the doctor and prepping their charts and all that. But I sit. On average, I walk maybe 2,000 steps a day, on a busy day, 3,000. And that's about my limit on walking. If I push myself to 4,000 now, with long COVID and my lung weakness in my whole body, it's exhausting. And I thought, how did this happen to me? Well, it's slow and easy, isn't it? It quickly creeps up on me. And so, with all of that, I decided to really look at my quote consumptions, whether it's buying things. Oh, yeah, I'm glad I got that immersion blender, and I'm really glad I bought the silicone pens. But I'm not going to be buying, buying, and buying. Like right now, I need a batting, so I'm going to go buy it. And I also started looking at how much consumption I was doing of social media, which I think is great if you cannot compare yourself and find yourself uncomfortable or FOMO or needing things because I'm influenced. And I got a app on my phone that I really like, and it's free, but you can buy some things if you want, which I did because I do surveys and stuff for Google, and they give me fake money to spend in their apps. And I got this thing called Focus Friend on my phone, and I have the newsletter from the Hank and John Green YouTubers, TikTok personalities, and they did a app. It says a new ADHD friendly app where a bean lives in your phone and will only knit if you focus. And so it's adorable and has great focus music. It is a free app and it is called Focus Friend. It is the cutest thing, and male or female, I think everyone would like it. And then while being knit when you're focusing, aka not using your phone, then you can get points or socks that the little bean is knitting, or scarves, and then you can decorate his or her or their little home. I turned my bean into a blue jelly bean and named it Sprout. And Sprout has knit enough with me being off the phone that I've been able to put a couple of things and Sprout's humble abode. I like the music too. It's very soothing and it reminds me of Animal Crossing. And you can have that little song play if you purchase an upgrade, which I did, an annual upgrade. So I can have it playing when my phone screen goes to sleep. And then that actually kind of triggers me to focus. Not only I'm not looking at the phone, but it's the audio I think that's helping me retrain my brain to be focused and to do other things and to not grab that phone every time I have a thought that I want to look something up or I want to check something or I want to see what this person may be doing today by texting or messaging or whatever. The phone is designed, the apps are designed, as you know, to make you want to use them more. And that's where the problem lies with everybody, not just children, but I realized with me. So, Focus Friend, it's free. If you need an app to help you stay off your phone, the bean is adorable with a little sprout on its head. And maybe you can come up with a more original name than I could for your bean. So, let's wrap it up right there for this week. I really hope that you take time to find something to do that's really inspiring and take a little bit time every day to move, to breathe some fresh air, and to be creative. Have a wonderful week.